We recently released a 10-second tip on our social media channels using a parametric table setup to demonstrate how to use the materials applied to source geometry. This is particularly handy in situations like this where you're using several assets from a stock library to construct a scene assembly style, and you don't want to have to manually create a multi-sub-object material and remap all the IDs. To use this feature is just a single button in the style rollout, but we got some additional questions asking for more information about how to create the actual table parametric setup, which can create tables of any length, add place settings and other table accessories, and then randomize the whole lot so that it looks a bit more natural. In this tutorial, we'll explain how that can be done. First of all, you'll need to source your assets. For this demonstration, I've just used a table and several other accessories from the Chaos Cosmos library. Next, we need to prepare our geometry for RailClone. The only thing we need to do really is to change the table, which will slice into two segments using modifiers. So we'll turn on the axis, change it to remove positive, and then move the slice plane so that we only have one end remaining. Now we need to create the middle of the table. So we'll duplicate this object, change it to copy, and change the mode to remove negative. We'll copy and paste the existing modifier and then move the slice plane so that it's at the other end, leaving just the middle section. And that's all we need to do. So we just have two sections, a start, which will also be the end, and a middle section. With that done, we can start to create the RailClone object. So we'll go to the i2 software section and add a new RailClone object to the scene and open the style editor. We're going to create a new linear array and add a spline node, and then pick a spline from the scene. Add a segment node and pick the start and wire it to the start input. Now we want to reuse that at the end, so we'll put a mirror operator in there and wire it to the end input too. To fill in between, add a new segment node, pick the middle section and wire it to the default input. So there's an issue, it's on the floor, and that's because the bounding box is used instead of the pivot. So we'll change the pivot, that moves the table section up and into the correct position. So that pretty much takes care of the table. If we were to render this now though, you'd see that it has no materials on it. And this brings me back to the quick tip we talked about right at the beginning of this video. In order to enable the materials being selected from the source geometry, we just turn on this option here, use segment material. And if you render again, you'll see that's worked. There's still an issue though. At the end where this end segment meets the middle, there's a cut because the UVs no longer line up. So we can get around this by re-UV mapping inside of RailClone using the apply box mapping options here. So just set a length, width and the height, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees so that the wood grain rotates the correct way. And I'll do the same for the other segment. And with that done, you'll now find that the texture runs seamlessly across all three segments on the top section. So we'll just open this up and hit render again. And you can see there's no visible joins any longer. So that takes care of the table, which can now be any length just by adjusting the spline. Now what we want to do is to add the other items such as the chairs and the accessories. So we'll start with the chairs. And we'll do this by adding another linear generator. So we're going to build this up as a series of generators. And then we're going to add another segment, and we'll use that to pick the chair from the scene. Wire it to the evenly input. To change the spacing between the chairs, go to the generator's rules settings and change the evenly distance. About 0.5 meters in this case seems to work well. You can see it's currently in the middle on the spline, so we want to move it over to one side. We can do that with the generator's Y offset setting. Now these chairs are very tidy looking, perfectly arranged. That's not really how things tend to look in real life, so let's mess it up a little bit by going to the transform settings for the segment and enabling translation randomization with a smallish value 0.1 meters for the X and the Y. Obviously we don't want to do the Z. Okay, so maybe that's actually a little bit too untidy. We'll reduce this a little bit further to half that size. And that's a little bit better. Now we'll randomize the rotation a little bit too. just -20 and 20 in the rotation. So that does one side of the table. Now you might think you need to add a new generator to add the other side, but in fact all you need to do is go into the existing generator settings and turn on the mirror option, and it will offset it the same distance onto the other side of the spline. You can also flip the original array or the new array using the flip A and flip B options. So you'll notice that the chairs have gone black, and that's because I'm using quick mesh mode, which enables viewport instancing, but does have the side effect of presenting mirror geometries black in the viewports. This doesn't affect the render, it's purely a viewport effect, and the trade-off for the speed that you get and the viewport performance when displaying high resolution meshes is worth it in this case. So now we'll clone this generator in order to create the place settings. So I'm going to pick the place settings from the scene to replace the existing segment, and you can see they're on the ground. To fix that, I'm going to export the Z offset property. The value I'm going to use here will be the height of the table, so I can export the Z size of one of the table pieces, and then wire that to the Z offset property, and the placemats move up to the height of the table automatically. So you can see we need to adjust slightly the Y offset here to bring the table max back into the table. And also the wine glasses are facing outwards towards the seats instead of towards the middle, so we'll change flip A and flip B around to fix that problem. It's also randomizing a little bit too much, so we'll reduce the rotation amount and the translation amount so that the randomization is a bit more subtle for the placemats. And once that's done, we can change the Y offset again, just to tweak that back out more towards the chairs. And there we have a finished parametric table with place settings and chairs and a resizable table itself. So now what we want to do is to add some accessories down the center of that table. And we'll do that using another generator. We use the same spline and wire that to the spline input. We'll bring in a segment and pick one of the accessories from the scene and wire it to the evenly input. I'm going to go into the export the properties again, and I'm going to set the Z offset exactly the same way as we just did with the placemats by wiring it to the height of the table. So now we have an accessory in the middle of the table. We want a few more of them though, so we'll change the evenly distance and reduce that down until they're just about touching without overlapping. And of course add some randomization, so I'm going to randomize the translation a little bit on the X and the Y axis, of course not the Z. And I'm going to randomize the rotation. Now this can be randomized all the way through 360 degrees to give us maximum amount of variation there. So now I've got one of those in there. It's a simple case of adding the other segments. I'm going to do that by wiring them through a randomize node. This will randomly select the geometry. So I'm speeding this up, but I'm just going to quickly copy and paste each segment and then pick a new piece of geometry from the scene and wire it to the randomize node. So now I've got a random selection of different objects. Now of course there's some issues. Those dips don't really want to be randomized through 360 degrees. So for that segment only, I'll just change this to, well, -10 is still a bit much, so -5 and 5. And that gives it a bit more natural randomization for those. Everything else is still randomizing 360 degrees. Another neat trick with the randomize operator is to wire an empty segment to the input. And what you can do then is create gaps in the array by it being allowed to randomly pick a segment that has no actual geometry assigned to it. And with that done, we have a finished style. So we've got one generator being used for the table, another one for the chairs, a third one for the place settings, and finally the fourth one for adding the accessories down the center of the table. If we close the style editor now, we can assign this easily to multiple splines just by going to the base objects rollout and then just picking a new spline from the scene. As you can see, this would be a very easy way of quickly populating a restaurant render, for example. If we look closely though, we could use more randomization, each of the place settings is identical, whereas in reality the bowl and the glasses and the forks and so forth might not be in exactly the same place unless you've got excellent waiters. So what we're going to do is to bring in this proxy as a mesh and then split it apart into individual elements. So I'm just going to speed this part up, but I'm basically going through, picking an element, detaching it and naming it. I'm going to do this for all of the objects in this little stack. Now what you'll find, because you're detaching here, is that the pivots are all in exactly the same place, and that's very important when we reconstruct it in a second in RailClone. So now I'll isolate that and pick the RailClone object. So I'm going to reopen the style editor. I'm going to find the segment that adds the placemats, which is this one here, and I'm going to swap that for a compose operator. This is kind of like a grouping operator. Now this already has some transform randomization in it, which was quite subtle, so we'll keep that and we'll import all of the other objects using this segment by using the clone multiple option. So I'll just go through and pick the other pieces of geometry I want to import and click clone, and it will re-import those with the settings. Now I'll wire those into the compose operator, and you can see what's happened at the moment is it's put them in a line in a sequence. We want them to group based on their pivots. So just switch that mode to grouped, and everything's aligned to its pivots but then randomized individually. So you can see the bowls, for example, they're all sitting slightly differently on top of the plates. And for example, we can tweak these individually too. So here I'm changing the rotation of the napkins so that the number is a little bit greater to add a bit more variety with that particular element. So with that done, we've got tables that we can define using the length of a spline. And then within that, we've got randomized chairs, randomized plates, randomized accessories, all kinds of variations to help disguise the repetition for realistic interior renders. We hope you found this quick tip useful. Stay tuned for more videos to help you get the most from RailClone, coming soon.